Advice most likely to result in achieving a goal may be challenging to follow or appear counterintuitive. For example, when the quickest journey time may involve driving a circuitous route. Or when the optimal advice involves large-scale change that is difficult to maintain. Such advice is less likely to be adopted by users, which poses a dilemma for designers of systems that aim to offer useful advice. In this paper, we explore this dilemma between what we have called goal-directed advice and adoption-directed advice. Goal-directed advice is that advice which is most likely to result in an individual user achieving their goal fully, but which users are less likely to follow strictly. Adoption-directed advice is useful advice that is more likely to be followed by a greater number of users, but which has a lower probability that individual users will fully achieve their goal. We conducted an online experiment exploring this dilemma in 4 scenarios, asking 2 research questions. First, are participants' preferences sensitive to domain context? And second, do preferences differ depending on whether participants are giving or receiving advice? In our analysis, we found a clear preference for showing goal-directed advice, which was consistent across scenarios and also indifferent to participant role. In the paper, we discuss these findings in detail, using our analysis of participant survey responses and building on prior theory. Here we show a few examples of the themes covered. One of the key themes is the relationship that individual participants have to the crowd of other users. Here we see a contrast between a majority who see individual responsibility as the key motivator and others who focus on the wider benefits that might be achieved across populations. Related to this, we see many participants adopting an egocentric standpoint towards advice. These participants often discounted the efforts of others, while potentially overstating their own capabilities, a finding that reflects prior research. We also see that task complexity and task familiarity played an important role in participants' preferences. For example, some participants selecting adoption-directed advice stated that less challenging but still beneficial advice reflected common sense. While for familiar tasks, such as route finding, preferences were often justified with reference to personal experience. The final theme we introduce here is the notion that preferences should be good for business, reflecting our experimental premise that the participant is making a design decision. Here, the divide between goal-directed advice and adoption-directed advice was reflected in a tension between attracting an initial user base and long-term user retention. In conclusion, we show how the dilemma we identify echoes wider dilemmas discussed in previous literature and start to unpack its implications for the design of algorithmic systems.